Ryan, firstly, I guess I just wanted to start out with getting a little bit of your own personal context. So, how long have you managed the hotel?
Yeah, so I've been with the Annex for just over or almost 4 years now. So it would have been April of 2019.
Okay, so you've been, from what we've heard from, I think some of the artists, you've been working there since there's always been the murals up there then.
Yeah, since we joined or since I joined on with the Annex project about 4 years ago, obviously art's been a large component of the Annex neighborhood as well as our hotel. So there was pre-existing art when I've arrived, and it's been refreshed a couple times. So there's been additions to the space throughout the last 4 years.
Okay, interesting. And yeah, actually, that's a great transition into my next question, which is how have you seen the laneway change over time?
Yeah, good question. The transition, I think, has been, I mean, Toronto in general has a great art culture and embraces the arts and culture in general, and specific to David French Lane. I've seen it kind of doubled down on is the word I'd use. I mean, it went from obviously being beautifully decorated. I believe Art TO was involved in one of the initial kind of designs of the laneway. And since then, you've seen a number of street artists come and add pieces. One of the interesting things about David French Lane and some other lanes in Toronto is that when let's call it well-known artists or well-known street artists participate in things like these, you actually see less vandalism. Like there's very little
Mm.
tagging or art that is put over top of it. There's almost this unkind of written rule or spoken rule of respect.
Yeah, we have noticed a lot of people have mentioned that as well. So yeah, I did notice though that the wall of the hotel doesn't have anything on it. Was that a specific choice that was made, or is there maybe some art to come in the future?
Yeah, so stay tuned for art to come in the future.
Cool.
Artists are in popular demand. We've looked at working with some of the artists who have done installations in David French Lane there. I mean, our aesthetic is very minimalist, at least from an exterior perspective. If you come into the hotel to any of our venues, whether it's Cafe Wine Bar or Tutus, which is the cocktail space, even our hotel rooms, we celebrate local artists from Toronto. So there's no shortage of art, but it's almost that kind of encouraging or provoking curiosity in our, I'll call it our vestibule there. There's that cutout in the side of the building. We've had that muraled. So that's been designed by an artist twice now.
Oh, okay, that's cool. And inside, can you talk a little bit more about, because I've been into the little cafe area, but I don't recall seeing too much. Could you give me a little bit more information on what sort of art you have in the interior?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we opened, we worked with a number of local artists to celebrate portraits, paintings, pictures, kind of a wide ranging, a variety of art. And we have an extensive art program. We're actually, Daniel Caesar, who's a Canadian Grammy Award winning artist, is our chief cultural officer. So he ensures that we're kind of always on the pulse and culturally relevant, for lack of better expression. So it's a rotational art program. We're always celebrating new local artists and starting to look at Canadian wide artists, so all across Canada.
Do you find that a lot of graffiti style sort of street art makes its way into the collection?
It definitely makes its way into the collection for, I'll call it, photographers that we celebrate, because most of their shots are celebrating specific neighborhoods, or that's kind of their style. So not directly like, let's call it street art style, but it finds its way in different ways.
Um, do you worry often at all about people graffitiing that exterior wall of the hotel? Like not the murals, but just tags and things like that.
I don't know if worry is the term I'd use. It's annoying when thing gets tagged. It's kind of, it's almost our own fault. We have a black exterior, which makes it a great canvas for people who want to install good or bad art. So it's a reality of having a laneway hotel or property in Toronto. It happens, but no, it's not a worry of ours. We deal with it, but our long-term solution is kind of integrating our building into the rest of David French Lane so that we experience what most neighbors have experienced, which is kind of deterring vandalism.
And I don't know if you would know at all, but was the decision for the location of the hotel being there in that sort of space, did that have anything to do with the art in the area?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that a direct decision was art. The annex neighborhood was absolutely a decision, or it was a factor in deciding to be there. Our whole kind of ethos and what we're about is celebrating more than just sleep. It is about life existing on the ground floor and energy. So the annex met that kind of threshold. Specific to the art that is in and around the neighborhood, it wasn't a direct. It wasn't like it wasn't why we chose the space, but it was definitely welcomed.
And so, as far as this specific laneway goes, of course, in Toronto, you do find that there are other laneways that have graffiti and of course murals, and then other areas that don't have anything. So for David French, do you think that there's, why would you think that this laneway specifically has become more of an art gallery than other laneways?
Yeah, I think it's accessibility. I mean, you're right off Bloor there, Harvard's right below. So in terms of kind of discovering it by mistake, so to speak, it happens. You see locals coming to check it out. You see tourists. It's kind of a multitude of different demographics that come to interact with it. And I think it's primarily location, and it's also open and airy too. Like you don't feel enclosed when you're in the space. So it's just easy to interact with.
And how do you personally feel about the street art there versus the graffiti?
I love it. And sorry, when you say street art versus graffiti, are you referring to like the street art as purposeful installations, and then the graffiti is kind of like vandalism or things that have taken place outside it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think when I'm saying graffiti, I think of more illegal, and street art, I think of more commissioned work.
Excellent. I'm all the commission work is fantastic. Again, graffiti is part of living in a major a major city, and Toronto being the fourth largest city in North America. Like, it's going to happen if you travel anywhere else. You see it all over the place. It can be celebrated. It can be something that cities try and fight. But I think that projects like David French Lane discourage kind of the unwanted art and encourage people to maybe even pursue like that tendency to want to spray on walls or paint, to actually maybe to harness that energy and do good things with it. I mean, you hear of a number of stories locally where there's, let's call it, juveniles who maybe don't have the best upbringings and whatnot, and they go out, do their thing, they're tagging, whatever, but then they're also like at the same time being inspired by the stuff around them, and they can change the course of kind of their own doing by starting to get involved in art programs and stuff. So I think it's much more than just an art installation or graffiti. It's really programs that serve communities, but also are like, art's one of those wonderful things. It's everyone's own interpretation. So I think I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree with you there. I mean, while we were in the alleyway, we really rather enjoyed it. And it does feel like even the tags along with the murals kind of all blend into each other. So I think you're right in saying that, it's sort of that learning process for like younger people that just might be starting out. Um,
Absolutely.
I was wondering, again, just for you personally, what would be maybe one of or a couple of your favorite pieces in the laneway?
Great question. Mr. Spud's done a few in the laneway there that are fantastic. Other than that, I honestly, I'm happy to admit to it. I'm not great with artist names. I remember pieces more than anything, but there's some Indigenous or First Nations pieces that are absolutely incredible. Well, as well, I'm thinking like halfway down on the left hand side. This is my visual memory. There's like some orcas and things like that. So I like it all. It's all very different. I've learned to put my personal opinion aside on art and kind of just try and appreciate it all. So they're all great.
Yeah, thank you. And I was just wondering, I don't know if you would know, but have any sort of neighboring businesses or people around the area or even guests, have they ever expressed being unhappy about the murals or any of the graffiti in the alley?
Honestly, no, I've never heard of that. I know a lot of businesses embrace the program as well. Obviously, you would have seen the Transact Club, which is shares the same laneway with us. They have murals all over their building. Quite often, you actually see guests at the end of their trip. They'll head out and they'll take a picture beside the "You're Here" in the annex mural that's right on the garage immediate to kind of our exit. So it's one of those things that I don't think people honestly notice it, and then all of a sudden they're interacting with it.
Yes. So this one is sort of just a personal question. So as I was looking through your website, just to get a little bit more information about the hotel, I noticed that you have a section devoted to the neighborhood. Um, and you have recommendations for some of your guests, and there's a section other than the food, drinks, cafe, that says neighborhood, and I noticed that there was just the barber shop. Have you ever thought about integrating the laneway as maybe its own kind of feature?
Yeah, so that's a great observation. What you're what you're experiencing is a website that is currently broken and in the process of being fixed.
Oh
So
no.
um, we definitely recommend more than just the barbershop. We actually during the pandemic or ongoing pandemic, but really in the thick of it during restrictions and whatnot, we launched an annex survival guide. I think it's on our Instagram, but we celebrated a number of local businesses, cafes, neighborhoods and what to do and check out there. So I know there was some art galleries as part of that, but the David French Lane suggestion is fantastic. So maybe we'll incorporate that in there and celebrate the maybe celebrate you guys group.
Cool. Thank you. And I think one of my last questions would be, do you think we've sort of, I guess, chatted a bit about this, but do you think that the street art in the laneway has had an impact on the way that guests experience your hotel, either before or during their booking?
Yeah, I think that I mean it's not typically where people would arrive. Like they're not going to come up David French Lane. It definitely has happened. But in terms of being in a laneway, our property is not the norm for a Toronto hotel. Like we're tucked away. That can be a bit of a scary thing for people from out of town. This exists everywhere else in the world, but specific to Toronto, it's unique. So what I'm getting at here is that I think the art immediately gives people kind of a sense of peace and like, oh, this is something that's cared about and cared for. So definitely calming. And they definitely interact with it. I mean, when they're walking out of the building in the morning, night, whatever time it may be, it's impossible to not see what's right in front of you. So absolutely, guests definitely interact with it. I think it's been an extremely positive thing for the Annex Hotel.
Yeah, thank you. I think that that's a perfect way of describing it. I was telling my classmates that when I first moved to Toronto, one of the first places I went was that alley because there was an establishment there before the hotel, and I got
The good old
invited
green
there.
room.
Yes. And
Nice.
it was just very nerve-wracking for me because once I realized on Google Maps that it was in an alley, I wasn't really sure where I was being invited to. But once arriving there, it's a totally different experience, and it really does put you at ease.
There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ryan, thank you so much. Samantha, do you have any other questions? I think,
I don't personally, but if anybody else has any questions that they'd like to ask Ryan.
Yeah, of course.
yeah. Gila, Ryan. Maybe I'll just say, Ryan, this thought about it being calming. We've heard that from a few people. You know, it's interesting how that the art on that laneway has this effect on people walking through. It's not just it's calming, but it's also captivating, right? And they talk about being drawn in to the alley. So a really interesting experience.
One thing that I could leave you with, and I will try and pull it up and send it in an email. There's a famous New York art critic who actually stayed with us, or a writer,
Oh, wow.
and their initial tweet at 2 a.m. in the morning when they arrived was, "They say it's all glitz and glam," and it was a picture of the exterior of the annex building at 2 a.m. in the morning. It's just black, and like their next line was that, or one of their hashtags, and they they then proceeded to in the morning update the tweet and say this is one of the most incredible hotel experiences I've had. Neighborhood's
Oh,
beautiful, and like talked about some of actually the art. So that ties that together. So we're
yeah,
at fault for having this black, well, I wouldn't say ugly, but kind of boring building in a space that celebrates art so heavily.
yeah.
And then the daytime comes around, you see everything else, you're like, oh, it's okay, it's great. So we're definitely
Wow.
adding an installation on that side that will fit in with the neighborhood. But yeah, there's been a multitude of different people who've interacted and probably had similar opinions to all of us and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sorry, maybe just one follow-up question, Ryan. Do you feel that the hotel has played a role in sort of legitimizing street art and graffiti as a form of art in this area?
Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't take credit away from people before us as well who have kind of kicked off these programs by being the
Right.
residents and owners of the Laneway Homes, the Transect Club that's been around for over 50 years. I could even be like understating that. One thing that's extremely important to us is celebrating locality. We'll never recommend a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons. It's all about local coffee shops and artists. So we have hosted a number of artists who have participated um, in creating murals all over the city and stuff as well. So yeah, I think we're playing our part. I wouldn't say that we're the front runners, but we're happy to do what we're able to and play our part and ensure that artists have a space to come stay and interact with a business in a meaningful way.
I think
Uh,
whichever artist you end up choosing will be very, very happy. That's such a huge wall, and I think it'll look gorgeous. We can't wait to see what you guys choose.
Neither can we. You'll have to come by and check it out once it's all complete.
Yeah, for
Sounds
sure. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for all of your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, and best of luck with the project.
all
Thank you.
right.
You too.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
Thank you.
day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.